Good afternoon. I'm Carol Christ. I'm the Interim Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost. I'm delighted to welcome you here to this seminar by Rick Levin, a Professor Emeritus at Yale and also the CEO of Coursera. So Rick was born, something you may not know, in San Francisco. He's an alumnus of Lowell High School, and he went to a university that we often mention in rather muted tones on this campus, Stanford. He has an amazingly interdisciplinary, or I suppose I should say multidisciplinary background. He majored in history as an undergraduate. Then he did a degree in politics and philosophy at Oxford and a PhD in economics. He was a faculty member in economics at Yale for many years, and then, of course, became Yale's president, and he was president for 20 years, and it was an astonishingly successful presidency at Yale. During the time when he was president, the endowment grew from 3.2 to 20 billion. That is staggering to me. Applications tripled. And he carried out the largest renovation and building program in Yale's history, including the adding of 2 undergraduate colleges. And I remember the scandal. I can't remember if this was under you, whether this was something you inherited or you had already started to fix it. But there was a scandal of a deferred maintenance backlog at Yale.
Horrible. I'll be talking about that at the Kerr lecture in 2 weeks.
So, so the fact that the campus of Yale is so beautiful right now and is very much a tribute to Rick's leadership. He was also a leader in expanding Yale's international partnerships, not only in China, but with the National University of Singapore. And he created this really innovative joint college between the National University of Singapore and Yale. He also, and this is going to sound trivial in relationship to the things I've been saying, but it is not, improved Yale's union relationships very significantly. So Rick is going to talk about something. Ben Gaber-Maiden is way in the back. He's a graduate student of sociology, and Ben first brought this paradox, really vividly to my mind, which is we have the development of MOOCs, which seem a really democratizing kind of form of higher education, but the pioneers have been elite universities. And Rick is going to talk about that very interesting conjunction between the MOOC and universities' investments in the MOOC. And so I'm sure we're all eager to hear Rick.
Thanks so much, Carol. It's a pleasure to be back here at Berkeley. I knew the campus well as a young person growing up. All my cousins went here. My younger brother went here. So I was the black sheep of the family by going south rather than east from San Francisco. But I am looking forward to your reactions to this talk, and I'll try to keep it short enough that there's plenty of time for questions and interactions at the end. As I think you all know, that I'm also on tap to give the Clark Kerr lecture, which was to be tomorrow, and because of the potential for issues arising on campus within a few hundred yards of the venue, it seemed to make sense to postpone. Anyway, I'll be back 3 weeks from now to do that, and that's on a somewhat broader range of issues about financing higher education. But here I'm going to talk about just kind of what I've been up to for the last 3 years, which is as the CEO of Coursera, I see this issue from a very different perspective than I did as president of Yale, where in fact we were an early joiner of Coursera, and where we had earlier, around the same time you were doing Berkeley Online, we did open Yale courses, much the same idea of just putting educational resources, reading lists, and course materials, as well as videotapes of lectures captured in the classroom online. And in a way, that was kind of the proof point for the MOOCs, for the founders from MIT and Stanford who started the MOOC revolution just 5 years ago. In fact, if you look at the date today, it's exactly 5 years and 5 days from the public launch of Coursera. Seems like a lot longer. to the general public. I mean, maybe you're tired of hearing about them, but Coursera was founded that month, so was Udacity, which turned, in a way, veered away from university content toward industry-provided content. But then about a month or two later, MIT and Harvard and Berkeley and University of Texas, well, I guess MIT and Harvard initially announced the formation of edX, and then Berkeley joined shortly thereafter. So what I want to do is talk about how things have evolved over that past period of time, and in particular to sort of focus on what the early expectations about MOOCs were, how they were exaggerated, but what's the reality actually look like today. So here's the outline, because this is the way we give economics talks. I want to tell you what I'm going to tell you before I tell you. First, just a level set. Probably this audience understands what a MOOC is, but let me I'm going to just describe that quickly. Then I will talk a little bit about the hype that accompanied the 2012 launch of, actually started in the fall of 2011 with, before these companies were formed, but the hype about MOOCs. And then the reaction about a year later, where there was all of a sudden just a wave of skepticism about all the things that were wrong and all the things that were problematic about MOOCs. So then I want to go through those things one by one, kind of what were the expectations, what have the outcomes actually been? Does online learning really work? Is it actually sustainable as a business model? And is it really true that the university is going to be replaced by this, or is it going after the same audience that universities have traditionally gone after, or is it a new audience? Who are the learners? And then I'll close by talking about what's the impact of MOOCs generally, and the sort of interesting twist that I bring to talks about this, and I think is the twist in the reality is MOOCs are having a far bigger impact on the labor market than on the world of higher education, and I want to try to explain why that's so and what implications it has. Okay, so first of all, a MOOC is a massive open online course. And the predominant platforms offer MOOCs that have this form. They rely on the results of learning science from years back, really from the 1980s, when Carl Wyman did the pioneering work on interrupting lectures. He concluded that the 50-minute lecture was perhaps the least efficient mode of transmitting information from one human being to another, and found that just by interrupting lecture classes with questions or quick quizzes or clickers or something to distract the student from this from the trance they were falling into, that would actually improve retention. And he actually found results like that retention of the content of the lecture literally doubled if you did this interruption every 6 to 10 minutes. So all of our MOOCs at Coursera, edX, the same, are sort of based on short modular videos that are frequently interrupted with in-video quizzes to keep you going. Typically, these are ideas to reach large scale at low cost. So the assessments, the tests, are typically machine graded. And since if you've got 2,000 people in a class or 20,000 people in a class, it's not so easy to have even a lot of TAs grade the exams and quizzes and papers. We use peer grading for the non-machine gradable content. So if it's an essay or a longer piece of computer programming or a design in an architecture course or whatever, those are peer assessed. And since this, the stakes are lower than they would be for a transcriptable credit somewhere, it's worked out actually very well. And learners really like the opportunity to grade the work of others. The typical terms of trade are, you must, in order to get a grade yourself, you must grade two other people's work. And that's a learning experience in and of itself. And the professors write rubrics that help guide you. The courses are, again, experimentation. One of the amazing things about the internet is, and the numbers that are involved, is you can get very rapid feedback. So instead of, well, I'll give you an example. This is sort of straying a little bit, but when I used to teach economics, microeconomics at Yale, I would some years find that there's some question in the exam that people just didn't get, like they were stuck. And then the question arises, was this a lousy question? Did I write a poor question? Or did I actually cover this material poorly? Now, if you're teaching a course once a year, you can iterate. It may take you 3 years to figure out what was actually wrong. If you're on the internet, you can change the question. You can watch the data for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks. If that doesn't work, you can go in and shoot the 6-minute or 12-minute video again and see if that works. So the rapid feedback is a huge advantage, and so that's one of the things we learned. One of the things we did rapid feedback on is, what is the right course length? We tested, and actually we found that the maximum retention and completion was achieved by having courses that were not a semester long or a quarter long, but 4 weeks long. And so that's the norm. There are discussion forums. That is the nature of most of the human contact in these courses. There are forums that are threaded by discussion, organized by discussion topic, and are reasonably thickly populated among the learners in these courses, but actually probably only 20 or 25% of the people in a course actually participate in the forums. We do have, to make it, again, scalable. In the early days, professors got online and played in these discussion forums. Today, since courses are running all the time, next point, always available, courses are running all the time, starting every, let's say, once a month and running for 4 weeks, and then another session starts. It would be insane for professors to be online all the time. And most people have even dropped the idea of having their own teaching assistants online all the time. And instead, we have a network of 30,000 people who have volunteered to be community mentors, about half of whom have master's degrees, and they assist in the discussion forum by sort of helping to answer questions and steering people to the right resources. We're automating a lot of that. I'll come back to that. The courses are, all, like I said, run frequently. We now have a mobile app that is just as good as the web app, so you can basically take the entire course, do everything on your phone. And then the MOOCs also have, all of the providers have basically found ways to aggregate these units of content from a single 4-week course to aggregations like Coursera specializations or edX micromasters or Udacity nano degrees, which are larger aggregations of content. Okay, so what about this hype cycle I was talking about? So at first, the question was, well, there's one of two futures here. Either this is going to be a great tool for tremendously lowering the cost of college education, because we'll replace a lot of the classroom teachers with technology, and we'll still have residential campuses. Or the other future, there won't be any residential campuses. We'll just do the whole thing online. Well, I mean, to any thoughtful person, that was crazy from the beginning, but that it gained a lot of currency and popularity. And then, within the next months and year, the sort of anti-hype part of the cycle hit, and all kinds of skepticism. Well, look at this. How could this is never going to work, because only 6% of the people that sign up for a course actually end up completing it. Or these courses are free. How is it going to be sustained? MIT and Harvard are putting $30 million into this stuff each to start with, and Coursera's raised $25 million as initial capitalization, and how are we going to make it sustainable? And then a year later, you have people writing, well, I don't see, no universities have disappeared in the last year. They're all still here. Sort of kind of silly, but that there was no progress. The idea that 2 and 3 and 800-year-old institutions would sort of fall over anytime soon were wrong. So what I want to address is sort of what is the actual effectiveness and impact of the MOOCs. So the first question, is online learning effective? Well, I mentioned this, that content mastery, going beyond the Carl Wyman observation, there have been a lot of studies now of content mastery with MOOCs relative to regular classes. And there were, one study of MIT physics students, for example. And And what they showed is basically that at least when you talk about content mastery, the MOOC is better than the lecture course. Now, the best of all worlds is a MOOC with facilitation. To go off and study on your own, do these self-guided exams and tests, but have an opportunity to talk about the material with a live person. That actually is optimal, but it's not as highly scalable as the MOOC itself. I explained, there's a couple of intuitive reasons why this is so, and one of them is what I mentioned, that the short segments and frequent quizzes do improve a learner's content mastery. But the other thing is the two features of the technology, which are the speed adjustment on the audio track and the rewind feature. So what do I mean? So on Coursera and actually on edX too, you can adjust the speed of the person talking from 50% to 200% of a normal rate of speech. And the technology today is such that you don't sound like a chipmunk at 200. For those of you who remember the Chipmunk song, you don't sound like you're a squeaky with just the pitch, and it's great. I mean, I don't know if any of you've tried that, but I find it really helpful. Like, it's a difficult concept to slow it down a bit, and when I just sort of check out how's this economics course, it's something I'm very familiar with. I just speed it up. And then rewind, and that is just so critical. I mean, how many people have sat through a math course and gotten lost in the first 10 minutes? I mean, you just get lost, and then you sit there for 40 more minutes, and you don't, you haven't gained anything from that talk because you were completely confused. That doesn't have to happen with a MOOC. You watch the video segment, you take the quiz, you don't get it right, you go back and watch it over. Now, here's what's coming. We are working on, this is one of the early applications of artificial intelligence in the MOOCs. We're going to automate counseling to people that fail quizzes. So we're actually going to be able to recommend what to do. Like, if they go through, the first thing will typically be try listening again. The second, to this segment. But then if you miss it twice, it might be able to diagnose from the particular nature of the question you missed what you're missing. You lack a fundamental prerequisite for this course. You're forgetting what a derivative is in calculus. So go back to this other course and watch this module, and then come back. So that's all going to be possible. So that kind of counseling that's automated based on responses of the learner. So I think it's really a good tool for learning stuff. It's not yet anywhere near the efficacy of developing critical thinking skills that you can get in a classroom. So, the live seminar where a professor drills you, asks you to sharpen an argument, make that argument, defend it against other students. I mean, that kind of rigor that you get in an Oxford tutorial or a Berkeley seminar just isn't attainable with the current technology. It's not attainable at scale. You can replicate that interaction with live video synchronous interaction where the people aren't actually in the room, but you're seeing their pictures, and that video technology is much better today than it was, even 3 years ago. So you can have a pretty lively seminar discussion, but that doesn't get you the scale and cost advantages of the MOOC. It's essentially the same as teaching on campus in terms of professorial time and cost and so forth. So we got ways to go, and to some extent forums and peer grading partly compensate for the lack of critical thinking attainment, to they're an imperfect substitute. And basically, that is a fundamental reason why high quality residential education isn't going to go away anytime soon. Completion rates. Okay, so I don't know what the system is here at Berkeley, but at the beginning of the semester, do people shop courses? Do they go to a bunch of courses and then decide on their final drops and adds and all of that? Yeah. So if you were measuring completion rates from the number of people that showed up sometime in that first week, your completion rates would look pretty terrible, right? So that was what was happening with the MOOCs. Basically, anybody who registered for the course and even if they didn't even turn on the button and press and start the first video, they were measuring completion rates from registrations. And so literally half the people never showed up in the first lecture. And then so the 6% completion rate was kind of bogus. So what are the real numbers? 40 to 50% of those who get through 1 week of material finish the course. And then I'm going to come to paying. But if you actually pay for a certificate, the completion rate is 60% plus, which is pretty reasonable given you're dealing with people with lots of competing interests on their time. They're not full-time students. And then the second big piece of skepticism was, is there any way to make people pay for this? And what has happened is, yes, there is. I mean, we still have both edX and Coursera have courses that are large. Most of the courses are available for free in the sense you can audit the lectures. But if you want to take the formal assessments, if you want to have the peer grade, the peer graded access to peer grading and so forth, and you want a certificate of completion at the end, you pay. And these prices are low. I mean, $49, $29 in developing countries, up to $79 or $99. I mean, very reasonable prices. We've actually started with testing monthly subscriptions at $49 a month. I mean, compare that to tuition at any college, or even taking one course a year at a college, it's a very good deal. And what we found is people, unfortunately, you've heard that I studied history, philosophy, and politics before economics. I'm a big champion of humanistic education and founded a liberal arts college in Singapore, but the truth is people aren't paying for those courses. They're paying for career-relevant courses where the credentials are, you can use them as job market signals. And we discovered this when we launched a specialization of actually this is a 9-course sequence from Johns Hopkins in data science in April of 2014, and found it just, almost, the large fraction of people wanted the certificate and paid, and we could see there was actually revenue in that. And then Wharton launched a business fundamental course and a series of courses, and that brought substantial revenues. And then we had a big content launch in the fall of 2015, and our revenue spiked up, and we've been growing very rapidly ever since. Udacity has similarly had success with what they call in Silicon Valley monetization of content. So there is a market, there is a model here. Like Coursera will be a viable company. And just to illustrate the point, if you see here that the distribution, I don't want to be in front of it, the distribution of enrollments across categories of subject matter are fairly flat, but if you look at the revenues, the top 3, business, technology, and data science, represent 80% of the revenue. They represent, about 50% of the enrollments, but 80% of the revenue. And then finally, who are the learners? I mean, are we just taking people away from the market for attending a physical campus? And first astounding fact, there are a lot of people. 25 million registered learners on the Coursera platform, about 10 million on the edX platform, and 4 million on Udacity. And they're all over the world. Very few American internet companies have a large international business until they do a launch in a different market. We've had from the beginning, right at the very start, already 60% from outside the United States, and now it's 77% outside the US, 45% from developing countries. And here's the stunning fact: only 15% are under age 22. So this is not the college-age population predominantly that are taking these courses. It's learners between 22 and 45 who are at the stage of life where they want to pick up additional skills to advance their careers. And very large fraction of the paid learners are in that group. And these are people that are either trying to advance their career by taking the latest computer technology course, or if it's been promoted to a manager, they want to take some courses on management from a top business school. Or they're career starters. They really want to start over and try something different. Think of the amazing use case of the liberal arts major who basically graduates, as we all know, with a great education, but not a lot of job-ready preparation. And these online credentials are a way to signal that. Take a few business courses and take a finance course, and the English major will have an easier time getting a job. So that's the sort of audience we're actually hitting, which is really interesting and important, which is saying that the MOOC and the highly scalable online offering is a way to expand the base of learners that universities educate. And it's, in a way, and I'll come to this at the end, but it's kind of mission redefining. Who are we here to educate? Are we just here to educate people intensively at the formative moment early in their lives? Or are we here to, or does technology now make it possible for us to serve people throughout a lifetime? That's why I went to Coursera. That was the insight, that this is a gigantic broadening of the audience for higher education. It really is that's the way it's a revolution. Not that it's going to supplant the bricks-and-mortar university. It's going to make our social mission more important and more relevant and more fulfilling. So what is the actual impact on these learners? So we did a study published in the Harvard Business Review a year and a half ago on 50,000 course completers. And of those who said advancing their education was their principal reason for taking the course, that was about 35% of them, 88% said they got some benefit educationally. Of that 52% who said they were taking courses to advance their careers, 87% said they got some benefit. And the most remarkable fact is 33% got a tangible benefit. That is, they got a promotion, a pay raise, a new job, or started a business. I found that an amazing statistic, that many people would have had a material gain from the online educational opportunity. And interestingly, the impact is greatest for low-income students in emerging economies. And we just today actually published a follow-up to this study, which we've been working on, because once we saw these results, we decided we're just going to send out that survey as a regular thing for everybody 6 months after they finish a course and try to measure what happened. To be honest, we only get about a 15 to 20% response rate. So it's, that it could be a little bit of selection bias involved here, but still the results are quite striking. And into this last question of tangible benefit, if you're from a developing country and have low socioeconomic status and do not have a college degree, 48% of those people responded that they got a material benefit from the course. So, we're doing something valuable. So how do we explain this? Where's this impact coming from? Why is it happening? I think it's largely because, the world is changing out there. I mean, the nature of work is changing. There's been a lot of talk about this, and actually The Economist did a big cover story, a special edition on it in January. That technology is creating new types of jobs at an alarming rate. I mean, obviously there've been a lot of that ever since the Industrial Revolution, and when power loom operators replaced hand loom weavers, but that happens slowly and gradually. And today the pace is just much faster. Categories are being eliminated. The skill requirements for for continuing jobs are changing, largely because of technology, and entirely new types of jobs are being created. A result is that career paths today involve much greater mobility. Millennials, it is estimated, will have 13 to 15 different jobs during the course of a working career. It's not like you go to Procter & Gamble and stay there for your whole life. It's just not like that. Let me tell you, as an employer of these young people, if you keep someone for 3 years, you're doing well. I mean, they move around. And the millennials value professional development. This is another reason it works from both sides. Technology is demanding that people upgrade themselves, and young people want this. When you look at surveys of what do you want in a job, professional development is typically in the top 3 factors for young people. And then finally, despite the fact that there's in much of the world, not so problematic in the United States 10 years after the recession, but in most of the world, there's still a pretty high degree of youth unemployment. That is to say, unemployment under age 25 or 26. And yet, there are categories of jobs, some of these newer fields, where there's just tremendous excess demand for labor, and just not enough labor supply. Data science is one. I mean, data science is, I'll be skeptical about this. Yale took a brilliant approach to data science by solving the problem of not having a data science faculty with the stroke of a pen by renaming its statistics department. But I thought it was a little bit of a cheap way out. But the truth is, there's a whole new interdisciplinary field that's drawing on computer science and machine learning and traditional statistics that has given rise to new tools for analyzing large data sets that are very much in demand and incredibly relevant and effective in business. I'm a director at American Express, and I'll tell you, the savings from applying machine learning algorithms to credit scoring for card applicants and to fraud detection on the network, amazing savings compared to the traditional methods of trying to do these things with standard statistics. So there's a lot of jobs out there. By various estimates, between 200,000 and 500,000 jobs in data science or data analytics in the United States alone right now. Our Johns Hopkins specialization, by the way, has been the biggest source of data scientists in the world in the last 3 years. We've over 100,000 people have been trained through that program. So there is a new labor market reality, and what we're doing is disrupting the labor market, if you will, by providing online credentials, micro credentials, for something much less demanding than a full degree, but that's an efficient and highly scalable solution for both the employees and the employers. So micro credentials are, they're not, in the most cases, not a substitute for a university education. They're a complement. They're something you do on top of the university education that helps you move around in your career and helps you keep your skills up to date. It's kind of a virtuous circle in the sense that micro-credentials are a currency. Learners post their credential. They take a Coursera or edX course, they post it, the certificate on LinkedIn. Employers increasingly see these on resumes and are beginning to realize, well, we should hire to that. There was a recent survey done by TechCrunch magazine about what's the most effective way of what gives the best indication of a software engineer's performance on a job interview. And it turned out that among the things you could choose, what the human resource people were choosing from was the quality of the college they'd been to, the nature of the field that they'd studied in, their job experience. But the number one factor was, had they recently taken a course had they recently got a certificate from Coursera or Udacity. Amazing. But that's, it's a narrow field. It's sort of, and software engineers, I don't know if you're familiar with this in Silicon Valley at least, they test you. You come in for a job, they give you a coding exercise and you have to solve a problem. So there's kind of a virtuous circle. I would say that Coursera certificates are the most frequently cited credential on LinkedIn, but I don't know that for a fact, but I'll tell you what the story is. 2 years ago, LinkedIn published a survey, counting up who had, not a survey, but this tabulation of the most frequently cited credentials on LinkedIn, and Coursera was number 2. Went ahead of all the traditional industry certifiers, any of the standard industry certifications, like CompTIA, tech specialists, or a Cisco, network technician or whatever. The only certificate more frequent than Coursera in 2015 was Microsoft. But now Microsoft owns LinkedIn, so we'll never see that tabulation published again, my prediction. What's next? What are the new frontiers in this area? I resist the temptation to say in this space. I don't like that's what they all say. in Silicon Valley. So one is to go into businesses, and actually companies are very aware that millennials want professional development. They also recognize that they have needs to update the skills of their learners. And so we're offering, and Udacity, which is narrowly more focused on computer science and derivative type jobs, and now edX, all have gotten into this area, and we're finding we're like responding to a need that's very much perceived. That is, corporate training and learning and development on the job has largely been done by internal staff, and they're not the best people to bring people up to date in these rapidly changing areas. And the quality, except in a few places that have really strong reputations for training, like Goldman Sachs and McKinsey, the quality of the training programs is just not that great. And people recognize that. And when you look at them and compare them, to taking a Stanford course or a Berkeley course or a Yale course, even the corporate trainers can see that their stuff is not as good. Now, so we've hit a chord, and the adoption has been very, very rapid. We had 40 businesses sign up within the first year, and most of them now are beginning the first renewal cycle, and they're all trading up and wanting more, more employees exposed to this. Government workforce development programs, similar situation. You have unemployed and underemployed people all over the world. And interestingly, we've made more traction with foreign governments than with our own. Although we do have a program in the state of Maine, and another interesting program for people in the last 6 months of military service to sort of train them up for the transition to being civilians. But Pakistan, for example, has a program where they identify the top 1% of their high school seniors, and they give them a laptop. Well, now they get a laptop, and they also get, access to Coursera certifications to help them move along in their careers. And some of the others are more directly, Kazakhstan is starting a financial center in the capital, Astana, trying to become the Central Asian financial hub. And so what they've done is they've got a training program to teach people, basic financial skills, and then how to be, how to get jobs as a financial analyst or accountant or whatever. And so that has traction. I have a particular pet political agenda here, which is there is on the U.S. tax code books, a lifelong learning tax credit, lifetime learning tax credit. It was passed at the same time as the Higher Education Opportunity Tax Credit was passed in the Clinton administration. And people use that Clinton tax credit a lot to help them with college tuition. This lifelong learning tax credit could be similarly helpful, but in a fit of budget madness, Congress has restrained its eligibility for this program to, first of all, by not making it refundable, it eliminates all people that have incomes below, essentially the 45% of the U.S. households do not pay income taxes. So none of them can take advantage of this program. And of course, they're the people at the bottom of the income distribution who could most use it. And then there's a cap. If you make more than $65,000, you can't use it either. So we're really talking about hitting 15% of the people with this opportunity. And obviously, the obvious solution is to make it a refundable tax credit, as Singapore has, so that you could get credit for, get some help further along than, the higher education tax credit is you only can use it 4 years during your life, and it has to be for an accredited degree program. This would be a way to help people take these more flexible micro-credentials and get some government support for job retraining. The other thing we're doing, sort of at the opposite end of the spectrum, is recognizing that a lot of our university partners actually want to explore the idea of offering degrees online. And there are right now, many of the purveyors of these degrees are not exactly the quality institution that you and I would recommend anyone. but 15% of all students enrolled in degree programs, I should say master's degree programs, are entirely online. What's happening now is we're seeing, high quality master's programs on 2U, and at least one very significant one at Georgia Tech on Udacity, and a couple on Coursera, are now offering, really good master's programs at very much reduced prices. The Georgia Tech master's degree in computer science is like $7,000. You can get an MBA from the University of Illinois and Coursera for $20,000. Way less than the residential equivalent. So that's interesting, and that's going to be, again, a different market. And we have 2 master's programs on Coursera now. We surveyed the learners, 90% of whom said that the consideration of a residential program was not in their decision set. It was not on the table. It was a question of getting a degree online or not getting it at all. They were on average 10 years older than the people in the corresponding programs. They were in jobs, they had families for the most part, and so what we're doing is allowing basically the 30-something-year-old to get the same kind of advanced education that the 20-something-year-old gets today on campus. Here's sort of what I see as the future of higher education, and it's not very far off. That by 2030, universities of the high quality, such as this one, will be offering, as we always have, high-quality undergraduate and graduate degree programs on our campuses. But I think what you'll also see is most of the top-tier universities by 2030 will have high-quality online master's programs, fully online. There'll be some hybrid programs too, which is you do most of it online and then come for 1 semester or 2 weeks or whatever to the campus. You'll see undergraduate courses increasingly, and probably in state universities, being offered for credit so that you can transfer among system schools. I mean, we've had this vision for a long time, but have online. Think of the people in California that could not have to spend 4 years of their time as an undergraduate on campus, but could substitute up to X% of their courses while they're working or and so forth, and get credit at any of the system campuses. I think that's going to happen. I think the one thing that's exciting is you think of some of the problems of higher education abroad and realize that the aspirations of many developing countries are simply unreachable. So India and Brazil, for example, large populations, the current rate of enrollment in higher education is about 10% of the age cohort. It's where the US was before the GI Bill. And the aspiration is to get to 30% of the age cohort, which is where most developed countries are now. Some are considerably higher. And we're talking about attendance, not even completion. So but get 30% into the system. They don't have, neither India nor Brazil has enough qualified PhD educators to scale this by 2030. That's the aspiration, by 2030. Nor would the investment in physical bricks and mortar be, achievable in that rapid a time frame. So online has got to be part of that solution. And so campuses that educate very large numbers of people, where a significant fraction of what these students do is online and not requiring, facilities or full-time faculty, is a natural part of their solution. So I think we'll see a lot of licensing of high-quality materials into developing countries as they expand their systems. Now, I have to pause in an environment like this and say, this is exactly what some of our humanities professors are terrified about, because they see jobs being eliminated in the United States by these kinds of courses being licensed into the small liberal arts colleges or the second-tier state system schools and all the places where our graduate students go to teach in the very few jobs that are actually out there. That's a problem. It is a problem. But the cost of higher education, and I'll talk about this in my career lecture, but the cost of higher education is rising in uncontrollable ways. And if there are more efficient ways to get more people through the system at lower cost, we'll find a way to do it. So we need to just prepare for that reality. And it's not a threat, and I think it'll take a long time. I mean, the power of faculty inertia in the United States is pretty strong. So it's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen that fast. So, but I think there are opportunities for this to happen overseas with a truly benign effect, because you're not displacing people from jobs. You're actually creating more opportunities. Is going to happen. And then finally, we'll be providing courses to enterprises and government workforce development programs. So all in all, just reaching more and more people and having an impact on their lives. That's a positive one. So the mission of the research university, we all have our own way of saying it, but ultimately all of the mission statements of great research universities are the same. They have two elements. We advance knowledge through research, and we disseminate it through publications and teaching. And what the MOOC allows, what technology more broadly allows, is for that dissemination mission to be increased by orders of magnitude. That no longer do we focus on people under age 22 as undergraduates and 20-somethings as MA and PhD students, but now we can reach people throughout their lifetime. We can reach populations that have no access to university system education. Just a much larger social contribution becomes possible through disseminating the fruits of our scholarship. And I do think that the top schools will be, to go to the question that's being presented in the dissertation, I don't think it's surprising that the top schools are sort of the first to get this. I mean, they look out there at the world and see this is potentially, at least a number of the faculty leaders and administrators see that this is just an amazing way to enhance the contribution of universities and to make us more important in the larger society. So that's the presentation. I'm happy to answer questions. Yes.
When you go about issuing these online certificates and degrees, how do you go about validating that this person actually went through this? In other words, you mentioned a company that gave coding tests, for applicants. So I'm wondering, in general, how do you deal with this?
We validate the identity of the learners by using. You're required to register with a photo ID. And show it on the screen. Your webcam takes a picture of it, we record it, and then every time you do a formal assessment that counts toward a grade, you have to sit in front of the screen and show your ID and show that it's you. We also do keystroke verification. A sort of backup is people have signatures with keystrokes, just like they do with fingerprints. They have distinctive patterns and so it's not as reliable as the visual identification, but we do that too. For the degree programs, which are higher stakes, where the grades matter more and where people are paying more and they're getting a more valuable certificate, we actually have a proctoring service where we actually have live people watching people take the assessments on their webcams, through their webcams. Yeah. Yes?
We have an online course that we teach in Masters of Public Affairs. And one of the things we do with this is since it's online, is we want to get courses elsewhere for our students to take. But one of the problems we face is that the University of California does not just certify any course that anybody takes. So have you been dealing much with the whole question of the certification problem so that we have some way of validating this is a good course, this isn't a good course, and that everybody would agree to that, and so that folks like us could use the courses that are the good courses?
Yeah, this is sort of on the roadmap of things we want to tackle. It's very tricky. I mean, my experience at Yale was it was so little standardization of how we dealt with transfer credits, just as an example. I mean, if students went to Europe for a semester, I mean, we would have absurd, decisions like our Spanish department saying that the Spanish courses they took at the University of Madrid shouldn't count. I mean, give me a break. So that they didn't teach it the way we do, and. I mean, it can drive you crazy. So it is because typically it's not the whole university that gives transfer credit. It's usually the department that has to make a recommendation. I don't know if it's that way here, but yeah. And so it's a hard challenge. And we're tackling it from two ends. We're talking to some of our university partners about how about loosening up on the acceptance of credit? and that's an internal problem. And then the other is get some of our universities to just say, we'll issue transcriptable credit. I mean, if Berkeley were to say that, we have one level of MOOC, but we also will give, a credit hour for a person taking this 4-week course with the proctoring, and if they pay a little more for the premium to cover the cost of the proctoring, we'll actually give transcriptable credit that they could use here, or they could use, any place that would accept a UC Berkeley credit, which would be a lot of places. So that's another way to cut through it. I'd be really surprised we got a huge amount of traction in the next 5 years on this, but over the next 15, we probably will. Yes, right here. Go ahead. Yeah, take turns.
I'm actually interested in thinking about the effectiveness of MOOCs versus traditional face-to-face education. I know that Florida State a few years ago, in their introduction to, I think, microeconomics class, actually randomly assigned students to either have a seat in lecture or to take the lecture through video online, right? And the students who did the latter performed significantly worse than the students who actually were in the lectures. So, and I would assume microeconomics, because we're long around the cost curves. We're thinking about this is relatively simple material to put into a MOOC compared to, say, comparative literature or
Yes.
poetry, right? Yeah. Or Victorian novels. And that might sort of be a sort of break on how good MOOCs are at actually performing effective education, right?
Yeah.
So I'm more concerned about like seeing randomized controlled trials of the difference between online versus in-person education.
There have been a few others, and generally, I think most there are more studies that show parity or the online being better than the other way around. But and the question is, what are you actually testing, and what was the experience online? If it was just put the lecture online without the 6-minute interruptions and with all the apparatus that make MOOCs effective, I could easily imagine, would you do better sitting in a live classroom for 50 uninterrupted minutes, or would you do better on the machine? That I could understand, because nobody watches the machine. They're going to be doing their email or texting or something while they're watching the lecture, but they're doing it in the lecture hall anyway.
So I have two questions that are sort of related. One has to do with your international audience. I assume that all of these courses are in English? Or are
no,
you doing...
most of them are. But we have, there's two routes. There's natively produced language. So we have university partners all over the world. We have about 60 to 80 courses natively in Chinese, comparable number in French, Spanish. And then we translate, all the courses are captioned. That was a problem that was run into here, but the Coursera courses have been captioned from the beginning, and so they're easily translated, at least the subtitles are translated. Now that doesn't solve the problem of the assessments, so comprehensive translation is kind of tricky, but it's very easy to translate the lecture title. So there's, all in all, we have about 30 languages that we translate into. Some courses have many languages, some have a few.
My related question had to do with what kind of access do you have in China? It's a huge market, and English is, an up-and-coming language of higher education around the world. So
we have about 2 million of learners in China. I thought this could be a very rapid growth market when I first came in, and at Yale I did a lot of work in China. There's been resistance. First of all, we and edX seem to be a target of the censors. Not that they're not censoring the content, but they're slowing down the site speed. I mean, stuff has to go through a firewall. And we've had intermittent periods, but the last few months have been terrible. I mean, sometimes you just can't even get on to Coursera or edX in China. So the only way to actually be successful in China would be to partner with Tencent or Alibaba or Baidu, and we've thought about it. And let them distribute the courses, because the Chinese government is not going to let any American internet company in any field win. They're just not going to. So it's a problem. Yeah.
This was a wonderfully persuasive talk, and I'm ready to invest in Coursera.
Great. Okay.
But one of my other investments has been 40 years as a historian teaching graduate students in
That's
history.
a great thing to do.
And I do worry, because 2030 isn't that far away when you're investing in graduate students.
Yeah.
And so you raise the question, and so I think it's legitimate for me to ask you to say a little bit more about that, because there are two consequences of what's going to happen. One is the disappearance of some of these courses in a variety of, as you described it, lesser places.
Yeah.
The other is the consequence for the discipline of history
Yeah.
if we teach fewer graduate students. And so the research that's done and the furthering of the field, I mean, this is something that people like me worry about all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, and I was in a field, of course, where people had an easier time because there were alternative forms of employment for PhD economists, and it made it easier. But my wife teaches literature, and we understand this problem very well. If we take a hard look at ourselves, I think one of the realities is, and you ask yourself, how many of your PhD students who actually end up being productive members of the global scholarly community in the field? It's less than half, for sure. And so the question is, how big does the pipeline have to be? Because the really critical issue is, can we sustain scholarship in all of these fields, and can at least the top tier universities, which are doing the advanced scholarship and advanced training, are there enough people there and in the Smith colleges and in the places that also are contributing to that global scholarly community? What does it actually take? When you look, if you look hard at where your students go, even in this of course now with this bad job market, they take jobs almost anywhere. But a lot of places won't hire a Berkeley or a Yale PhD because they just figure these people are not going to fit in, and so it's those schools that are the ones that are more. I mean, they're fourth tier schools hiring graduate students from third tier universities, and that's what's at risk. I think I don't think there's much challenge to the top tiers and the people that are going to be sustaining the scholarly work in the field. But it's a guess, and it is a risk, and it's just as the Luddites learned, you can't stop technology really. Yeah. Yeah. Well, most of our programs have cut back substantially the number of PhDs we've trained since the 1970s, right? I mean, there's been a diminution, except in the high demand, scientific and engineering fields. We've cut back in humanities and social sciences, and it's been an appropriate adjustment.
Nobody gets jobs.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. Yeah. Yes. Oh, sorry. You go ahead. You
Yeah,
take
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I think my question is very much the same as Paula Fass's, but I'll try to ask it in a slightly different way. So one of the premises of the American organization of higher education has been the enormous complementarity and synergy between teaching and research. And I think you have models in other countries, say France, where
Yeah,
there are these
institutes.
autonomous research institutes, and all the research and scholarship's going to be done there.
Right.
And actually it isn't as good.
Exactly.
And I don't think it's just because it's a smaller country and they speak French.
No, I've written about
I
this.
actually, and no,
was-
I mean, well,
It was certainly
not
true in
being-
Russia before the
and so
reforms
I
in
think
China.
it really is a challenge to, I guess the way I would put it, that is, it's not your job to solve our problem, and I totally see that. But what is it that all these wonderful Coursera courses are going to teach if the people who create the scholarship, ultimately upon which the whole apparatus of education depends, and the idea that you can segregate the low job market from the high job market is just not true. It's a pyramid. And when I'm going to use something Heather just whispered in my ear, but when we train a certain number of PhDs, and train is even not the right word, but when we educate PhDs, we don't know which of them will be the great scholars.
No, that's right.
And which of them will be the mediocre scholars, which will have the opportunity to really produce over their whole careers. Many of the people at the minor places who may end up as the sort of glorified teaching assistants running courses produced elsewhere online could, if they were in serious academic institutions, produce wonderful work. So I think there's a whole creative side of this that needs to be worked on to really imagine this as something like a living, breathing, organic system, and not just run, headlong. And so I agree about the danger of Ludditism, but I think that really we, not you, but we, need to think how this is going to be incorporated in a way that sustains or even enhances the opportunities for research and for creating new generations of people who can produce scholarship. And so I guess the one other question I would ask, where is the content of Coursera's courses ultimately going to come from if all the good new research is being done in China, say, and not here? Or, that is definitely where we're headed, I think. And that would be true in the biological sciences and so forth, as well as the humanities and social sciences. But, all right.
Well, I basically, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I agree with 90% of it. I think I certainly agree that on balance, the people you want teaching at scale are the people that are creating the knowledge. I mean, the synergy of the notion of a synergy between scholarship and teaching holds, and it's really interesting. There was the worry was one of the worries when the MOOC started. I didn't mention it. Was we're going to wind up with a market for these superstar teachers. Maybe they aren't really good scholars, but they're superstar teachers. There are some of those, but by and large, there's a very high correlation, at least in the courses we have, in the course ratings given by students and the quality of the institution, and it's a little harder to calibrate person by person. But I know this world pretty well, and I'll tell you, it's not an accident. The university with the highest average course rating on our platform is Yale. And number 2 is Stanford, and that that's out of 150 schools. It's not it's just not an accident. The best scholars tend to be the best teachers, and of course there's a little bit of selection here because every school is only putting on the platform stuff that is well taught. Nobody wants to put their lousy teachers up, but that's great for the humanity. That's great for the people taking these courses. I mean, if the universities are saying what I have that's suitable for export is only the really best material, I think there's a big social benefit in that. So, I think you're right. We need to look at the system holistically, and like I said, also none of this is happening over decades, not years actually. So I think before there's really wide adoption, I think of the technology in the residential campus classroom. It's going to take a pretty significant amount of time, I think.
We have time for just a few more questions.
Okay.
It seems to me you're providing an almost pure public good, and that should be usable to extend the capacity and the efficiency of bricks and mortar classes. And in fact, I'll say a shout out to Coursera, is that I use Coursera lectures as part of a sort of my instructional technology, if you like.
Great.
Little lectures on a material. And so I just think it's wonderful in that way, and I don't know to the extent to which you're trying to present it and market it as a complement, as an adjunct, as a really valuable tool in the model of flipped classrooms.
We are,
student engagement in schools that are really invested heavily in bricks and mortar teaching.
Yeah, nearly all of our content creators are, something like 50% or at least of our instructors that put courses up online use their own material in their own classes. That's a start, and do blended learning of some kind. That is that can be a really great form of on-campus pedagogy. Actually, frees you up to do interesting projects and team exercises and all kinds of interesting things in the classroom. Way back.
Blended learning piece.
Yeah.
Given that for a couple thousand years, all education has taken place from printed word until around about World War II, people started looking at films in classrooms. And then about a generation later, interactive media. The latest thing, all the kids are doing it, is virtual reality and augmented reality. And having worked with the University of Colorado's BP Visualization Center, I've seen the look on scientists' face when they actually for the first time see a molecule in 3D and they can walk around it and see the bonding surfaces. So for biology, chemistry, physics, and so forth, have you thought about the possible uses for this?
We certainly have, and we're going to have our first virtual reality course that will be taught. It'll be a course about virtual reality and how to design and build software for virtual reality, but it will involve people. People will have to get one of these very inexpensive Google cardboard virtual reality kits, but we're getting a nice low price on them so that it'll cost people about $20 or something. It's not going to be expensive, and that'll be our first foray. But I think over time, sure, I think you'll see. I mean, people will start to use these visualization techniques on campus and online. I mean, they're pretty amazing, and the cost of the more sophisticated, headsets and stuff they're gonna fall dramatically over time. So yeah, I think there's great potential there. There's lots of things. There are a lot of things you can do with technology on online education that work really well. Like we have chemistry courses taught without a lab because you simulate the experiment. You say put this in and that in and that in, and now that you simulate and the simulator will tell you what happens in the reaction. So there are ways to do things online, like essentially to be able to teach laboratory sciences that way.
We have time for one more question.
Just curious about your opinion of the University of Arizona's online program. My understanding is it has a fairly high level of attrition.
Arizona State.
Arizona State.
Yeah.
Sorry, Arizona State. And it's not the same. It's partly hybrid. It's partly fully online, as far as I understand. And I think one might view it partly as a revenue generating approach as much as an access point. And so we have some, this kind of ongoing question about maybe, I'm not saying Arizona State's a bad actor, but bad actors of some sort using this as a form of income generation. And then only to add to this, though, on the positive side, many other parts of the world have day students and night students at top tier universities. So there's actually, some very positive aspects. But there is a concern, say, at the University of California about creating two classes of students. The students that go and have a campus experience and hybrids, and those who are strictly on an online world. So, sorry, back to the Arizona State model.
Yeah. Actually, Arizona State is many different models. Mike Crow and his team there are just immensely creative, and they've got fully online programs for undergraduate and graduate degrees. They've got hybrid programs where you spend part of your time on campus. They're using technology in the classroom at a much greater rate than lots of places. I think if you were to talk to Michael Crow about this, he would tell you that he thinks that access and revenue, go hand in hand. That they really are interested in access, but are also interested in revenue streams that support the rising cost of on-campus education. And to foreshadow the lecture I'll be giving in 3 weeks, I'm going to talk exactly about this. That the chronic problem with higher education costs. This at the core. Why tuitions go up faster than inflation, and there's a longer argument which I'll give, but why did tuition rise faster than inflation and faster than almost any other sector of the economy? And that's because there's no growth in labor productivity. We still teach 15 people. The faculty-student ratio is the same as it was 100 years ago or 50 years ago. And without any labor productivity growth, wages will rise with the general economy, so prices have to rise. But in other sectors, there's an increase in the output per unit labor. That's what online education does. You can scale a faculty member to teach way more people. And even if you're just bringing in a fraction of the on-campus revenue, you are helping to offset the rising cost of on-campus tuitions. And I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
let's thank Rick once more.